Our intro music is provided by Kevin MacLeod at Incompetech.com.
With a little imagination, you should be able to envision the torches and hear the screams that echoed through here. Those recorded screams in the Barrens day were real.
You're listening to Night Dreams Radio with Gary Anderson.
Hey, that is me. Hey, the weather up in Gig Harbor, well, it's starting to rain, but we went through a few nice days where we didn't have any rain, and it actually was sunny 2 days out of this week so far. Boy, I can't wait to spring, late spring and summer when I can get on my Harley and start riding. And hey, if you don't even have a Harley, any bike will do. Just get on there and ride. Oh, boy. Hey, we're going to be starting on Monday going on Spreaker Radio, I guess, full time, and giving that a try. And you'll be able to also catch us on here, too, at the same time. I don't know how we're going to do it, but we'll have it figured out. And how you doing tonight, Kevin?
Oh, I'm doing splendid. How are you tonight?
Well, the same as always. I got a headache, and I got a dog that the vet said that it was going to die a couple months ago. It's still living. Changing diapers like about 10 times a day, and it's hard. You know, it's harder than
Back to the good old days, eh?
No, it's actually harder because, I mean, he's blind. He's part terrier poodle mixed.
Parrot.
Yeah, parrot. Yeah, we got a parrot around here too, and it gets horrible.
It does.
You know,
it's kind of loud.
Here we got this real nice studio built into the side of the house, and no matter what, for some reason, when that parrot goes, I don't care how much soundproofing you can put on the walls. That bird just drives you crazy. Along with the dog too. I mean, I love my dog more than anything in the world, and it's so hard. I was getting back to that. Changing diapers, you know, and just trying to, you know, make him happy. And it's really hard. I mean, it's harder than, we've had 8 kids, me and my wife, and from each other, not from other marriages. And it's been harder than any of the kids taking care of them. I mean, it's like a 24/7 job. I can't go anywhere because anywhere I go, the dog just starts screaming. It has to be next to me. Doesn't want to be with anybody else. It's kind of fun anyway. So anyway, anything going on about the show, Kevin, that the audience should know about or anything?
Just check out www.nightdreamstalkradio.com, and as Gary said, we will be moving to Spreaker, and that should be a little bit interesting, but it will be fun.
We need to put that up on the website, that you know, we're moving to Spreaker with that you know, web address for people who can tune in. I don't know if you've already done that, but we need to do that.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, and tonight I think it's going to be an interesting guest on the show, and I'm going to bring...
So we won't be just uploading it as a podcast. It will be basically full-time, like, you know, radio, going live on Spreaker the whole time.
Well, what we've been doing now is when we go live, we're live, and everybody hears us live. But then afterwards, to put it up on all the different apps, we have to load it up on all the apps as a podcast. Going through this other system, we'll still go live, and you'll hear us, you know, right when we were talking. And then afterwards, it'll be up there as a podcast along with iTunes, iHeart, and TuneIn and all that. So you'll hear us everywhere you're hearing us now. The advantage is that, well, you know, I think we'll get more listenership.
Well, let's just say it's going to be an awesome show. It's going to stay an awesome show, and we're going to continue to have more and more awesome guests. And I want to thank all the listeners right now that are listening, and I want to thank all the listeners that are going to listen, and I want to thank the guests that we're going to have on tonight, and I want to say thank you.
Hey, and also, too, on the 20th of this month, Peter Davenport from the UFO Reporting Center will be on for the first hour. Man, he has been on the radio on one talk show or another, starting back with the old Art Bell show and, Coast to Coast and everything else. And it's going to be interesting. He's going to give us updates on UFO reports and what's going on, with UFOs in general. And he'll be on the 20th of this month from 7 to 9 on our show. So it should be really cool. For that, I'm going to bring our guest on. So hopefully he's here when I do this. Hopefully you're there. Are you there?
Hello.
Yep, I'm here.
Okay.
Nice.
I thought I blew it again and hit the wrong button. I always have a tendency of doing that. It only started when I hit 66.
Not 69?
No, not 69. So anyway, why don't you tell everybody in our audience who you are and what you do for a living, and then we'll dig into it.
All right. Well, what I do is for the last, probably I would say close to 30 years, I've been doing full-time, I'd say a little closer to 25 years full-time astrology. And it's not a craft that I actually tried to get into. It's one that kind of found me. I started it in the mid-70s and didn't actually believe it. I was a skeptic of it. And my mother was the one who actually got me started with it. And I was critical and skeptical, and the more I researched it, the more I found out, wow, it's really accurate. And then when I got in the 80s, I was really delving deeply into a lot of ancient spiritual, Kabbalistic, Vedantic, and other, and basically anything I could get my hands on. And it really found me in the 90s. That's where I just got so many clients wanting me to do electional astrology, which is picking auspicious times to do things, asking questions, medical astrology. I can't give medical advice, but I certainly will tell them what the chart says. And that's where it's been. It's been a real journey for me, and it's been a lot of fun, and I've actually really been blessed to do it.
Oh, wow. And again, how old were you when you started? When it hit you?
I was in my teens. I was about 16 or 17 when I started it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was in like 75. And it was a really interesting journey. It actually started way before that, not so much astrology, but when I was a young child in the 60s, I had an astral traveling experience where I had some little pets, and they were two guinea pigs, and I actually was sleeping and saw one pass away, and I saw it vividly, and then I popped back into my body, and I ran downstairs. It was like 2 stories below, and that's exactly how the little guinea pig was lying, and my mother smiled and said, "You just astral traveled." So it started for me maybe back then, and I was always different than most kids, and I always felt kind of as an outcast or unusual, and it kind of really has been a wonderful journey for me.
Oh, wow. Was it when you were a teenager and you started dating, was it any problem when you asked somebody out for a date, and hopefully you didn't bring it up on the first date?
Well, I mean, a lot of people really like it. It's not like it's the plague or anything, but yeah. What it was is my mother actually would tell me things about girls, and she would be right on. And I said, "This is way past mother's intuition." And then when she started showing me what she was doing, I said, "Come on," I said, "astrology can't have any real work, or efficacy to it, or accuracy. I said, how can the planets control us down here, right? And the religions have done such a good job of making it out to be superstition for the last couple thousand years that it's now become this taboo thing in many circles. And yet many of the religions revere it behind the curtain, or I should say many of the people in them, running them. And once I researched it, I thought it was really pretty amazing how it could be that accurate. And I was always a fan of science and acoustics and music, and always felt that the linear left brain world would have an explanation for everything, and it certainly doesn't.
Oh, wow. Hey, is it anything?
Yeah,
is it anything like remote viewing or anything like that?
Well, yeah, remote viewing. I've actually worked quite a bit with remote viewers. Remote viewing is an interesting subject because, again, that's kind of a generalized term, and there's various methods of remote viewing. But remote viewing typically is to have a target and then see if they can actually hit it, and through various meditative states. And yeah, what I've done is I've actually had a couple of different remote viewing groups employ me to research why they were on at certain times and why they weren't. And we were specifically looking at correlations with mundane astrology, meaning, everyone can concede that the moon, the tides are affected by the moon, and of course we certainly feel the seasons every year, spring, summer, winter, and fall. And but getting more specific with remote viewing, we found an amazing correlation, not only in the mundane, in other words, what was rising, what planets were rising and cumulating, the aspects of the moon, the geometry of the moon, and then also the individual doing the remote viewing played a huge part in that.
Oh, wow.
In other words, their astrology.
Yeah. So, I noticed you use stuff for the stars and everything else and people wanting to get married and all that stuff. Can you explain any of that to me a little bit or to our audience?
Yeah, well, I have a lot of people. One of the things that I think really helps people is the insights that readings give. I know it's really been... That was probably one of the things that struck me the most is how accurate it was in my own life. The more I started getting away from modern astrology and I got into the older stuff, now some people call it Egyptian. There's no question the Egyptians were probably some of the most advanced astrologers. Most people have heard of Ptolemy because he has been translated and he's well known, but there's also Dorotheus and many other works that are matriculated into Greece. And I've really followed with many different translation groups who have, over the years, actually the last 35, 40 years, who have been doing some really amazing translations. And the Vedantic stuff, meaning the stuff out of ancient India, has been really intriguing to me. And people find, and that's what struck me, is that, wow, this just isn't happenstance. And the theory behind the ancient systems are we are spiritual beings having a physical experience. And the astrology isn't predicting the future. What it is it's showing cycles. We make our future. And I think that's one of the mistakes that modern astrology that I've seen makes is that it tends to want to predict the future or it gets interpreted that way by some, not all. But more, it shows markers or phases, and that's what I think a lot of people have found very useful in readings, and it gives them guidance. Like when you have so-called challenging periods, oftentimes they're challenging at the time, but they're periods of growth, and we all get them. And I would say that one of the most powerful aspects in any astrology reading is the cycles of Saturn and Jupiter. And the ancient systems have really shined